Hello, everyone. This is Ujjwal Gandhi from Spatial Thoughts. Welcome to our course on cloud native remote sensing. In this video, I want to talk to you about some of the key principles around cloud native remote sensing and introduce some of the technologies that has completely changed how we work with Earth observation data. We'll go through these technologies so you can understand some of the terms. We'll do a deep dive into some of the key data formats. And finally, I'll give you an overview of the open source ecosystem that is allowing us to work with massive amounts of data in a really efficient manner. So let's get started. Let's step back and kind of see how we've been doing remote sensing. I learned remote sensing more than 25 years ago. And I remember the first time I worked with satellite data, somebody handed me a Landsat scene on a floppy drive. And then I would plug it into my computer, open the data, do some processing, and then I would do some analysis. And decades later, still many people do the same thing. You would find some data, you would download entire scenes to your computer. You would use a software that is running on a computer that will process the whole scene one at a time. So if you're working in a large area and maybe you want to process 100 scenes, you'll have to do it one by one. You'll have to download all the data locally, and that doesn't really scale very well. The modern approach to working with such data is that you don't download all the data. All the data you need is available in some cloud storage in a data format that is readily accessible, and you would use the data and stream only the pixels you need for your analysis. You would not run this analysis on a computer. You would run this on a cloud server or a cloud machine that has fast connection to the storage, and you would be able to use multiple machines together to do the data processing in parallel. Now, contrast this with the traditional approach. This really scales well, and you are able to work with much larger data set. As cloud became more mainstream, it made sense for the remote sensing practitioners to also adopt this approach. Google pioneered this approach about a decade back with Google Earth Engine, which enabled a lot of us to use this data in the cloud and process this using lots of compute. And since then, the open source ecosystem has evolved. We now have modern data formats, open data catalogs, and Python tooling that allow us to do distributed computing. And that allows us to build systems which are vendor and cloud agnostic. That means you're not limited to using a specific data provider or a specific cloud provider. You can pick and choose the components that make sense for you and build scalable systems using those. So how would you build such a system? So the first principle is that you want to put your data and computation as close as possible. What this means is you typically run your analysis in a cloud machine that has got fast access to your data resources. Satellite data typically comes in scenes which are very large. If you want to analyze a small region, modern data formats allow you to only query and stream the pixels that intersects your region of interest. That means you can only stream the subset that you need for your analysis and minimize the amount of data that you are transferring. You also want your data to be in an analysis-ready format so you don't waste time doing pre-processing. That can be done just once by the provider, and then all the users can just use the data which is in an analysis-ready format. When you're building a data pipeline, you typically have what is known as eager loading. That means you say, I need step A, B, and C. You'll fetch all the data you need in step A, process it, then move on to step B, and then C. In lazy loading, in contrast, you first define the steps you need for your analysis, and then when you want to see the results, the pipeline intelligently fetches only the pieces of data that you need for your analysis. Maybe you're asking a question which doesn't need it to compute step B. So it just skips that part completely. Or if you say, I only want to see the result for this small region, and you only fetch the data and process for that region. And this greatly improves the efficiency of your analysis. And finally, most of the data that we work with are quite big. So you cannot load them entirely into memory. You cannot process them using a single machine. You'd want to be able to divide your data into small pieces and let different machines process different pieces of data. So if you have access to more machines, they can be processed in parallel, and then the results can be combined into your final data product. The modern cloud native approach that you'll learn in this class builds on these four principles. Let's learn about some of the key technologies that is enabling us to build such pipelines. The first one is the cloud optimized data formats. You must have heard of this data format called Cloud Optimized GeoTIFF. GeoTIFF is a traditional data format that we've been using. Most of the satellite data you would download would be in this format. That is a cloud optimized version, which is a backwards compatible version of this data format, which now allows you to host that file in a cloud accessible storage, and then you can query and stream only the pixels from those files directly without having a server in between or without having to download the entire scene. Similarly, there are other formats. For example, GeoParquet is a vector-based cloud optimized data format. If you are working with LiDAR data, there is a cloud optimized point cloud format. So these formats allow us to query and stream only the pixels we need for this data. So these formats allow us to only stream the pieces of data that we need for an analysis, and they can be stored on cheap cloud storage without having a server that is serving and processing those data. Historically, if you had some data and you wanted to share with somebody else, you would have to describe the data in some way. Everybody invented their own way of describing this data using metadata or some structure. But now there is a standard. This is a community standard that has emerged, and everybody in the ecosystem has adopted this. And this allows us data providers to describe the data in a standard way, and the consumers of the data to use standard tooling to query the data without having to learn how the data is structured. And because it's a standard, there's a great support of tooling. Whatever tool you're using, it's likely it understands how to query a stack catalog. If you had ever worked with remote sensing data using Python, you know it was quite painful. We had packages like raster.io, which were okay, but then it would load the entire scene into memory. If your data was too big, it won't fit in your RAM, it would crash. It would also be quite slow and painful. Fortunately, we now have a great ecosystem of tooling based on this package called Xarray, which allows us to work with multidimensional data. That means if you have a time series of images, instead of working with these images individually, you can work with this whole time series as a single data set. Xarray is built on top of pandas and NumPy, and that means it's really, really fast, and you are able to do some operations which are orders of magnitude faster than the previous iteration of tooling. There's also a great ecosystem of tools around Xarray. There are extensions that allow Xarray to understand projections and geospatial metadata, and there are tooling that allows us to do common geospatial operations like zonal statistics or convolutions. And I really enjoy working with Xarray. Sometimes I'm trying to do something very complex, and then I'll find a function in the Xarray ecosystem that has implemented this very elegantly and in a very intuitive way, and that always brings a smile to my face. As we learned, if you're trying to process lots of data, you need to distribute your computation across many computing nodes. Doing this yourself is quite challenging. Fortunately, we have Dask, which makes this quite trivial. If you are using any of the modern geospatial libraries, it has got built-in support for Dask, and that means you don't even think about it. You write your code as usual, and then you'll configure whether you want to run your computation as parallel computing on your own machine across multiple cores, or if you have set up a cluster, you just point to the cluster and Dask will just figure out how to distribute that computation. If you're running this code on your own machine, most modern computers have multi-core CPUs. So if you write some code and just run it on your machine, if you enable Dask and you have 4 cores, your computation will be distributed across the 4 cores, and you'll get 4 times parallelization of your processing. So far, we have talked about packages which work with raster data, but then we'll have to use some vector data. Maybe you want to get some admin boundaries, you want to get some buildings or roads data for your analysis. DuckDB is the modern tool that allows us to work with tabular or geospatial vector data. DuckDB is a database engine, and that means you can write SQL queries which can query data from cloud-hosted data formats directly, and you can extract and stream subsets of data to your analysis. And finally, we have Jupyter, which is the de facto standard development environment for modern data science. It allows us to work in notebooks, either locally or in a cloud-hosted environment. It is really great for working with large volumes of data. It can run code cell by cell so that you don't have to process the data every time when you run the code. It has support for interactive visualization where you can query and see the result immediately. And this lends itself very well to the cloud-native workflows that we'll be building. So these are the key technologies that will allow you to build modern cloud-native remote sensing workflows. Next, I want to do a deep dive on cloud-optimized data formats, focusing on a few key formats that you'll really need to know about when you're working with remote sensing datasets. What does it mean for a data to be cloud optimized? Well, when you have your regular files, they were designed to be downloaded on your computer and then work with it locally. In the cloud native approach, we do not want to download files. We only want to get data for the region that we're interested in. And that means even if the file is quite big, we should be able to look inside that file and find the subset of data that we need. And the cloud optimized data formats enable us to do that by adding additional metadata to a traditional file format, which will make them cloud optimized. The file formats have information in the metadata that can allow it to locate the data and only stream those bytes from the disk directly to you. And that means you can send a query saying that I only want data for this region, and the data formats have intelligent layout that allow the software to query only for the bytes for that region and directly seek those bytes from disk without having to load entire file into memory or downloading the entire data. There's a really nice write-up on the cloud optimized data formats. I have linked it here. I'm just going to briefly show it to you. This kind of explains the concepts and does a bit more deep dive into how those formats are organized, how would you convert the data from your traditional format to a cloud native format, and so on. I highly encourage you to go through this to understand more deeply of how these formats work. What are these formats? If you have your traditional vector data in shapefile or GeoJSON or KML or any of those formats, if you have points, lines, polygons, the modern cloud optimized versions of those formats are flat GeoBuff or FGB or GeoParquet. GeoParquet has quickly become a standard, so you'll find that most of the large data sets that are being produced as GeoParquet. If you're working with LiDAR data on LAS or LAZ files, there is a COPC format, which is the cloud optimized version of that. On the raster and gridded data side, if you had worked with NetCDF or HDF files typically used in atmospheric and climate data sets, ZAR is an equivalent cloud optimized data format for that. On the Earth observation side, GeoTIFF, we have a format called COG, which is the cloud optimized GeoTIFF, which is the optimized version of GeoTIFF. At present, if you're working with any remote sensing dataset, likely that you will find the data is distributed and is available in cloud optimized GeoTIFF format. This is a great format because it's a backwards compatible format. So if your software doesn't understand cloud optimized format, or you just don't want to use the cloud optimized part of it, this file still works in all the software. But if your software understands COGS and is able to look inside the metadata, it can query that file intelligently, and you get the benefit of all the cloud optimized streaming. It bundles the low resolution overviews. So let's say if your data is 10 meter per pixel resolution, the file itself will have the low resolution previews of the data at say 20 meter, 40 meter, 80 meter, and so on. So if you're looking at a very large region, instead of looking at the native resolution of data, your software can ask for a low resolution overview at say 100 meter resolution. And that means it can transfer much lesser data from the file. And all of this is bundled inside the file. So you don't have any separate files, you just have this one file. When you convert your regular TIFF to a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, in that process, the low resolution overviews are generated and bundled along with the file. As you zoom in, it'll incrementally seek high resolution previews, but then it'll only seek the data for the region that you're looking at. One of the downsides of a COG is that it makes your file size a little bit bigger, but the functionality it unlocks is quite massive and it's definitely worth it. I've linked to our course material, which shows you how to convert your regular GeoTIFFs into COGs if you are interested. And then we have formats like NetCDF. This is the standard for distributing climate and atmospheric dataset. This dataset also can be quite large, and it is quite painful to work with those large datasets. We have the cloud optimized equivalent called ZAR, which allows you to create this massive archives of data, but then seek only the subsets that you want. Here's an example of a 6 petabyte ZAR file. So that means if you have a massive archive of data, but you only want to load data for your region for a particular time slice, you can directly load those chunks instead of querying and loading the entire file. While currently ZAR is mainly used for climate data, there's an evolving support for Earth observation data. There's an experimental support for Sentinel data. At some point, they will move from distributing the file as a regular safe format to a ZAR format archive, and which will really improve how we work with this data. Finally, on the vector side, the most common format that you'll encounter is GeoParquet. As with other cloud optimized data format, you can seek a subset of data without having to load and scan the entire file. It also has support for spatial queries where each record has a bounding box, and that means if you want to load data only for a specific region, it can quickly filter down the data that is intersecting that region. If you have some vector data and you like to convert them to GeoParquet, I have linked to this nice tool called GPIO, which allows you to convert your regular vector data into optimized GeoParquet files. Lastly, I want to show you how all of these pieces fit together and give you a glimpse of the thriving ecosystem around these technologies. All the technologies that we covered, things like Dask and Xarray and Jupyter, these were all pioneered by the Pangeo community. This is a community of scientists and researchers who are working with Earth observation data and needed a scalable toolchain for their work. This community is still very active and they have different working groups. I highly encourage you to go and check out and participate in that ecosystem. As practitioners, startup and tech companies started adopting these technologies, they needed a place to come together and build solutions around them. And Cloud Native Geospatial Forum, or CNG for short, is spearheading a lot of collaborations in this area. So what does the ecosystem look like? Well, for our Cloud Native remote sensing ecosystem, we need 4 components. We want datasets. We need a way to run the computation. We need software tools to describe and build our workflows. And finally, we need development environments where we can write and manage our code. On the data side, we have a thriving ecosystem of stacked data catalog. There are many large catalogs with data being distributed on all major cloud platforms. The traditional NetCDF datasets are hosted on the thread servers. There are many of such thread servers where you can query and extract NetCDF subsets. There are a whole bunch of ZAR datasets being distributed on a variety of catalogs. We also have Source Cooperative, which has got a whole bunch of vector datasets plus other raster datasets as well. OpenStreetMaps and OpenStreetMap also have large volumes of cloud-optimized vector datasets that you can directly use in your analysis. We have access to the Google Earth Engine datasets. They have petabytes of data, which is exposed to the CNG ecosystem via XE, and you are able to stream any of the Google Earth Engine data into your Xarray ecosystem using that. And finally, if you have your own data set, you can convert them to any of the cloud optimized data formats and start using them in your workflows. For computation, we have Dask, which allows you to distribute your computation on your own hardware. So if you have a powerful machine or your own laptop or a server that you have access to, you can run parallel computing on that using Dask. And you have software like Coil, which allows you to do your Dask computation across many of the cloud clusters very easily and it manages all the configuration and creating the cluster for you. On the computing side, we have a huge ecosystem of scientific computing libraries like scikit-learn and Xarray and NumPy, but we also have geospatial specific packages that has built-in support for common geospatial operations. And we have a lot of flexibility on how we write and manage code. The Jupyter environment is really flexible. You can run those Jupyter notebooks on your own machine, or you can run them on a cloud-hosted Jupyter environment like Google Colab. And editors like VS Code have built-in support for Jupyter notebooks. So you are able to use this really modern, sophisticated editors and environments for running your computation. Hope this gives you a sense of the ecosystem and the breadth of options you have. As we dive into the course, you'll get a chance to work with each of the pieces and get hands-on experience with them. We covered a lot of ground, but I hope this gives you an understanding of some of the cloud native remote sensing principles and the key open source technologies that are involved. I'm really excited to teach you how all of this works in practice and help you build your own cloud native remote sensing workflows. Thank you.